Hello everybody. Today I am finally going to address in painful detail what the actual issue was with question 5. Lots of people have been arguing with me, have been giving all sorts of creative ideas of how they think you could have changed the question to fit the restriction, but I'm going to explain once and for all why this was not something creative that you had to do. This was an actual mistake in the paper. It was a question that was impossible, not difficult, but impossible to solve. So if we read through the information that was given, we'll see that they say, given that root 13 sine x plus 3 is equal to 0. Guys, that's important. That is true. That is given. So we can't change that. That is given. Where x is an element of 0 to 90. Now, we should know that that means that the angle x has to lie in the first quadrant. Now, in order to draw your triangle, and the way that you know that you have to draw a triangle is because this question goes further and says without using a calculator. That means that in this given equation, you have to make sine x the subject. But guys, I want to make a distinction here. We are not solving for sine x. This is not a solve for x question. We are simply taking the information that they gave us and we are making sine x the subject by getting rid of that plus 3 and making it a minus 3 and then dividing by negative 13. So negative root 13 rather, sorry. So we end up with this. Sine x is negative 3 over root 13. Now guys, what this means is, in order for sine of any angle to be a negative value, we know according to the cast diagram that that angle has to lie either in quadrants 3 or 4. But our second restriction that they've given us here is saying that x has to be an angle that lies in quadrant 1. That is impossible, guys. You cannot satisfy both of these conditions at the same time. You can't have sine of an angle being negative and then that same angle being in the first quadrant. That is impossible. Now, a lot of the kind of creative ways of trying to get rid of this minus that I have been told or that people have been coming up with are using algebra rules. Guys, this is not an algebra question. This is a trig question. This means that if you have that sine x is negative 3 over root 13, the negative 3 is going to be the opposite side. The length of that side is going to be 3, but it has to be negative because of it being either in quadrants 3 or quadrant 4. The root 13 is the hypotenuse. Now, if you know your trig, you will know that on the Cartesian plane, the hypotenuse can never be negative. So many of you have suggested that we put the minus at the bottom and then we just change that to positive because a square root can be positive or negative. Guys, that is the hypotenuse. You cannot decide to make the hypotenuse negative and then make it positive afterwards in order to get rid of a minus. That is not allowed. Another thing that many people have been suggesting is that when you have your sine x equal to negative 3 over root 13, that you decide to square both sides of this equation, right? Which will leave you with sine squared x equal to 9 over 13, and then as a little trick to get rid of that minus that you had originally, now you're going to do plus or minus the square root of 9 over 13, and then to match up with this restriction that they gave us, which is saying essentially that sign would have to be positive because it's a first quadrant, you then just decide to choose the positive value, which would be 3 over root 13. But okay, guys, let's say we do that. What does that mean for the given information? Does that still make this given equation that they gave us in the question, does that still make it true? Let's see. If I take root 13, and now I'm saying that sine x is 3 over root 13, and then I add a 3 to it, what does that give me? Well, these square roots are going to cancel out. I'm going to be left with 3 plus 3, which is 6. And that is not what they told us in the given information, guys. I'm meant to get a 0, not a 6. So even if you try some kind of creative way of changing your negative fraction into a positive fraction, it does not satisfy the given information. Let's now look at the practical implication for this question. Why, when you actually tried to put pen to paper, did it not work? Well, if you have your sine x over here, where you made sine x the subject, you are given that the opposite side has to be -3. So, all right, either your angle x is going to be over here, or your angle x is going to be over there. You will have that your opposite side is -3. Well, that happens in both quadrant 3 and 4, that your opposite side will be negative. Your hypotenuse will have to be the square root of 13, which can happen in any of our 4 quadrants because, like I said, the hypotenuse is always positive. Now we are left with having to calculate the adjacent side. Now guys, if our triangle is in the 3rd quadrant, the adjacent side is going to be a negative side. If we are in the 4th quadrant, the adjacent side is going to have to be a positive value. It is impossible for us, we can find the value of that side, sure, we can find the actual length of that side, but we can't say whether it's going to be negative or positive if we don't have another piece of information telling us it's either quadrant 3 or quadrant 4. This would usually be that second piece of information that would tell us which quadrant we are in. But the information that they've given here is telling us that our triangle is meant to be in the 1st quadrant. Right? Sorry, my triangle is not lining up. Let me just fix that. Our information, our second condition is telling us that our triangle is in the 1st quadrant. But guys, your opposite side can't be negative in the 1st quadrant. That is the whole problem. Your hypotenuse will still work, yes, but your opposite side will not. I hope that I have now sufficiently explained why this was a mistake in the question and not simply a more difficult question. To everyone that was affected by this, to everyone that was thrown off by this mistake, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. Let me know if you have any further questions in the comments.